Israeli military is struggling to protect civilians amid Iran war, but is ready to put children in harm's way. Israeli military to allow schools to reopen in some areas while admitting failure to detect missiles fired from Iran. IDF makes a big failure confession as Iran unleashes cluster bombs to wreak havoc in Israel as war continues to drag on.
You see the damage. You see what was caused by the cluster bombs. It's dangerous. The police bomb disposal experts are going from scene to scene, making sure there is no danger to life.
The IDF Home Front Command is easing wartime restrictions in parts of Israel that are considered under less threat, a move that could allow more normal daily activity in areas seen as less exposed to Iranian missiles and Hezbollah rocket fire. Schools are set to reopen in places assessed as facing lower risks from Iranian missile attacks and Hezbollah rockets, although this reopening is expected to apply only to selected areas that meet the Home Front Command safety criteria. According to the Times of Israel, the Home Front Command made the decision after carrying out a fresh security assessment, which is now shaping how restrictions will differ from one region to another. Times of Israel reported, and I quote, "From Monday at 6 a.m., the activity scale in the Beit Shean Valley, Jordan Valley, West Bank, Dead Sea area, West Lachish, Gaza border, communities, Western Negev, Southern Negev, and Arava, will be adjusted from limited activity to partial activity. This means that in those areas, educational institutions will be able to operate, provided there is an adequate shelter that can be reached in time. Gatherings of up to 100 people indoors and 50 people outdoors also permitted, under the same conditions. The threat of Iran's and Hezbollah's attacks on those areas is significantly less than in other areas of the country, which also leads to fewer sirens throughout the day. However, military officials stress that this does not mean that there will not be any attacks or sirens in those areas." Unquote. In other parts of the country, however, the activity level remains classified as limited, meaning a wide range of wartime restrictions are still continuing despite the partial easing announced elsewhere. Under these guidelines, educational activities are still prohibited in the rest of the country because of the ongoing threat environment, with only a narrow set of exceptions allowed under official policy. However, gatherings of up to 50 people are permitted, provided that a shelter or protected space can be reached within the required time in case of an alert or incoming strike. Workplaces can also continue to operate under the same conditions across the rest of the country, meaning business activity is allowed only where staff have timely access to proper shelter protection. Meanwhile, the IDF Home Front Command says it is actively working to improve Israel's early warning system, as the country tries to give civilians more precise alerts during continuing missile attacks from Iran. The IDF is specifically trying to improve the accuracy of detecting Iran's ballistic missiles through that early warning network, so that alerts can be issued in a more targeted and timely manner. These early warnings are sent out only after the IDF detects that a missile has been launched from Iran, meaning the system depends first on identifying the launch and then assessing the developing threat. However, the Times of Israel reported that it remains difficult to predict exactly where those missiles will finally land, which is why the warning process still has important operational limits. Therefore, in order to save lives, the military often issues an alert for a wider area and sounds sirens across broader zones, even when the exact impact point is still uncertain. The Home Front Command is now aiming to issue these early warnings in smaller and more localized areas after 2 weeks of war, reflecting an effort to reduce unnecessary alarm for civilians outside the likely strike path. This would mean there will be fewer situations in which civilians receive an early warning despite ultimately not being in the actual impact zone of the incoming missile attack. As a result, several towns may no longer receive siren alerts in the same way once the IDF improves the early warning system and narrows the areas covered by emergency notifications. The Times of Israel, citing claims by the Home Front Command, said this improvement could reduce that issue for roughly 30 to 50% of civilians, making alerts more selective and less disruptive in lower-risk areas. This comes as Semaphore reported that Israel informed the United States it was running critically low on missile interceptors, adding another layer of pressure to the country's already strained defense posture. According to Semaphore, US officials have been aware for months that Israel's interceptor capacity was already under serious pressure, suggesting the shortage did not emerge suddenly during the current phase of the war. The same report said the United States is not facing a similar shortage of its own interceptors, and that Washington still believes it has enough stock to protect its forces, bases, and regional interests. Semaphore also said that a critical shortage for Israel would effectively mean the country has fewer than 10 long-range interceptors left, a threshold that would significantly deepen concerns over air defense sustainability. The report added that Israel is purportedly coming up with solutions to address the shortage, although no detailed public explanation has yet been given about what those emergency alternatives might involve. Meanwhile, reports say Iran has intensified its use of cluster munitions against Israel during the war, a tactic that can scatter explosive submunitions across wider areas and complicate both interception and civilian protection. At least 2 people were reported injured in Holon, while impact sites were also reported in different parts of Israel, highlighting the wide and fragmented damage pattern associated with such attacks. Authorities later admitted that the destruction is significant following a cluster bomb attack in the Shfela area, underscoring the scale of damage caused by the strike beyond just the immediate blast zone.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest newsmakers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.